Have you ever heard of The Secrets of Enoch? The second book of Enoch? So looking through this book, and actually it's got some really interesting stuff in it. Actually started off just trying to study the topic of the morning star. You know, is it Jesus or Lucifer? And I did a search on Google and read a ton of different articles, and it just seemed like they were kind of guessing, a lot of them. I just felt like they really weren't. I mean, they never even talked about the Greek. You know, what does it say in the Greek and Hebrew? And I already knew that there were different words. Like, okay, what I'm referring to is 2 Peter 1 verse 19 and Revelation 2:28. I will also give him the morning star. In Revelation 2:22:16, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright morning star. And then you have Isaiah 14 verses 12 through 15. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of dawn. You have been cast down to earth. Actually, the term they use is Lucifer from the Latin. Who was once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend to the top of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Okay, so you've heard these verses before. And I'm reading around, and, you know, there's this, a lot of these YouTube videos saying, oh, look, see, the Catholic Church is singing to Lucifer. And what's going on there? I think it's kind of, I'm kind of in the middle on it. Let's just put it that way. Because St. Jerome, when he translated the Latin Vulgate, used the same term for Isaiah 14 when it says morning star, and Revelation 22:16 when Jesus says, I'm the bright morning star. So it sounds like, basically the exact same word is used to refer to the devil and to Jesus. Okay? But that's only in Latin. Okay? If you actually look at the Greek, if you look at the Hebrew, you'll notice they're actually different words. And actually, when I say Greek, that's probably best to just use Greek, because you have the Greek New Testament, you got the Greek Septuagint, and they're actually completely different words. Okay? And actually, I'm going to tell you what it really means and how they're not actually saying the same thing. Okay. I got both terms in front of me. For Jesus, it is actually the Greek term orthrenos, which means relating to dawn. It means early, like sunrise, okay? And the one that's referring to Lucifer in Isaiah is the term hiosphoros, which means to bear or carry. Okay? It's not exactly the same, because one means to bear the light, the other one means it is the light. Okay, so Jesus is the light. He is the early sunrise light. He is the light. And Lucifer is the bearer of the light. Okay? And Lucifer was his name before he fell. So this is what his job, in a sense, it was sort of his name was describing what he did. He bore the light. And what does that mean by bear the light? Uphold the light. What does uphold mean? Well, actually, I did a lot of research on what his job was. He was a cherub before he fell, and which is a second tier angel. He wasn't the high, from the highest level, he was second down. That's what I'm trying to say. The highest tier is archangel, which would be Gabriel and Michael. So Satan, or Lucifer, was actually not even the highest form of angel. He was second. He was actually below Gabriel and Michael, and actually got his ass whooped by Michael, right? When there was a war in heaven, as it says in Revelation. But of course, Lucifer had 1/3 of the angels, and Michael had the other 2/3. But what I came up with, it means to bring the light. It means to bear, to uphold the light, and let me just read a little bit here. It means to support, to defend. And here we go. Ezekiel 28 verse 14. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. And by covering, it means protecting. Okay? And also supporting. Kind of like his right-hand man. God's right-hand man was, in a sense, this angel, this cherub named Lucifer. He was sort of the guy that hung out near the throne of God on the Mount of God. in the highest heavens, and was sort of the protector, sort of the announcer, because he had pipes in himself. He was covered in gems and his pipes in him. And I'll just read some of this. Ezekiel 28 verse 14, thou art the anointed cherub that covereth and protecteth, and I have set thee. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Now, what's interesting about stones of fire is I've been reading the Secrets of Enoch, which is the second book of Enoch. It talks about in day 2 of creation that the angels were created. Okay, and it says they were made of fire. And actually, it doesn't say they were made of fire, but it talks about in the creation process there's a fire, and actually their weapons are made of fire and things like that. And that's why you hear about a fiery sword in the Garden of Eden, protecting the garden from Adam and Eve entering back in after they sinned. So there's actually, I can't remember, a few angels, a few cherub that were protecting higher up angels, and actually it talks about that in the Secrets of Enoch. So basically his job was, he was kind of like, in a sense, God's, I wouldn't say necessarily bodyguard, sort of like announcer, promoter, bodyguard, sort of like, this is what Lucifer was, even though he wasn't the highest angel. I mean, you know, if you think about it, it's kind of like, you know, these bodyguards for the president, sort of, but, you know, also an announcer, sort of got like two jobs in one. But he tried to exalt himself above God. And let's see here. It says he guarded the expansions of the heavens. And actually you don't see that in the scripture unless you look at the ancient Greek. In the Septuagint, or actually I looked at the Hebrew actually. The Greek doesn't say a lot. I think it was the Hebrew. Yeah, Ezekiel 28 verse 14, the Hebrew, if you look at it, it just says covereth, protecting, stretched out, protecting in the dewy realms, and it doesn't really explain what's going on here, but actually from what I understand, it looks like he was sort of the protector, promoter of God in the expansion of the heavens, in the higher heavens where the mountain of God is. Okay, so I think that's pretty detailed. And it says he has pipes in him, so I think this is where I get the idea. Is sort of kind of like the announcer as well, because he's got pipes in him. What are those pipes for? I mean, goodness gracious, right? So obviously he was sort of a protector. He hung around God, sort of right-hand man, and I'm guessing he was sort of a promoter or announced something or whatever in front of God. I'm just guessing that's what the pipes are for. I mean, what else are they for? To make music? You know, some say that he was the greatest musician. Well, those pipes could be used for announcements as well. It doesn't necessarily mean he was a musician. It doesn't say he was a musician, but I'm sure it made music. I don't know exactly what. The point is he had pipes, whatever the heck those are for. So it says he covered, protected. You know, he was sort of, that was his territory. Okay. Let's see here. 2nd Enoch, chapter 29, verse 3. Here Satanel, which is Satan, was hurled from the height together with his angels. And he was actually, when he was thrown out of heaven, he was circling above the pit. I guess bottomless pit, I don't know. That's what it says in Enoch. It says that Satan was created on the second day of creation and turned from his order and attempted to set his throne, just a sec here, as high as God's throne. Genesis 1:8, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning was the second day. So in Genesis 1:8, when he created the heavens, he created the angels, according to the Secrets of Enoch. And then it also indicates that we are angels. Not an angel, but we are second angels, sort of like a different form of angels. So actually, this is what the Secrets of Enoch says. So this is why when people have NDEs, near-death experiences, they say angels look just like humans. It's probably because we're made in sort of like a second version angel or something. We're not angels, but we're very similar. And it even says in scriptures we're made a little lower than the angels, and it says in the Secrets of Enoch that we're secondary angels. So that means we're a little lower. You see what I mean? And actually, I'll read it. I conceived a cunning saying to say, I created man from invisible spiritual and from visible physical nature. Of both are his death, life, and image. He knows speech like some created thing, small in greatness, and again great in smallness. And I placed him on earth, a second angel, honorable, great, glorious, and I appointed him as ruler to rule on earth, and to have my wisdom. And there was none like him of earth, of all my existing creatures. And that's chapter 29, verse 12. It says also God knew that we would sin before we sinned in the Secrets of Enoch. Verse 15 of chapter 29, for I have seen his nature, but he has not seen his own nature. Therefore, through not seeing, he will sin worse. And I've said, after sin, what is there but death? So he already knew we were going to sin when he created us. It says only 7,000 years, and then after eternity in this book. Actually, there's many pseudepigraphical books that indicate there's 7,000 years. And we're coming up on the last day, which is the last 1,000 years. So it's really close. Okay, the end times are very close, based on just all the pseudepigraphical data I've seen, all the biblical data. One day is 1,000 years. We live in a week, 7,000 years. The last day is the day of rest when Jesus is on the throne for 1,000 years. And then after that, eternity is what it basically says. And actually, here's verse 1? And I appointed the 8th day also, that the 8th day should be the first created after my work, and that the first 7 revolve in the form of 7,000, and that at the beginning of the 8,000 there should be a time of not counting, endless, with neither years, nor months, nor weeks, nor days, nor hours. Okay. Also in this Secrets of Enoch, or the second book of Enoch, God speaks of himself. He says, I am self-eternal, not made with hands, and without change. My thought is that my counselor, my wisdom, and my word are made. My eyes observe all things, how they stand, hear, and tremble with terror. If I turn away my face, then all things will be destroyed. So if God wants to, he could destroy us just by thinking us out of existence. Which makes sense, because I think there's a lot of intriguing science about how we're actually in a hologram, in that reality, and that particles are they really particles? You know, is it more of a magnetic field? Is it a wave? You know, what is an atom? What is an electron? Is an electron actually a particle, or is it a field? You know, so a lot of these people are actually, and there's actually, I did a video on this where there's actually someone who presents that our universe is a hologram, and it actually works out mathematically as well, that we are actually living in a hologram world. Okay, that our physical world is a hologram. It says here, devil's jealousy of man. They may also use the name Lucifer when speaking of Satan's motive for rebelling and of the nature of his sin, which Origen, Christendom, Jerome, Ambrose, St. Augustine attributed to the devil's pride. Irenaeus, Tertullian, Justin the Martyr, Cyprian, and again Augustine attributed to the devil's envy of humanity created in the image of God. And actually I wanted to add it to, that's something I read on a website, and I wanted to add to that when I read the life of Adam and Eve, that was the sin of the devil. I mean, well, one of the sins, it says he wouldn't worship God's image. And God pointed out how man was made in God's image. And the devil was jealous and envious of it, and he didn't want to praise God for it, I guess is basically what it says, if I recall correctly. So it's because of humans, because of us, that the devil is jealous and angry and all this type of stuff. Now, you know, there's a lot of people think that angels are just spirits, which I don't believe is the case. I think, I mean, it's very clear that Abraham fed them. Lot took them into his house. They bow down and worship God. A spirit can't bow down, you know what I mean? Well, maybe you could argue they could, but I mean, the fact is they eat, they do things like this, and it says that you can entertain angels unaware. Now, the question is, are they, now some might say they can take physical form, you know, when they want to at will, which, you know, you could debate, is that truly physical form, or is that just physical form when they want to be physical form? The fact is they can take physical form, period. Okay, they're not just spirits. I think it's that's sort of the end point of the whole thing. And it doesn't matter, you know, if you think they're physical at all times, or they can be physical when they want to be, or whatever, dude. The point is they have a physical nature to them as well. Otherwise, how would they mate with humans? Because it says that we're second, a little lower than the angels. We're secondary angels, which makes sense that God would create us in the same DNA type of structure as angels. And it actually says there's abnormalities when they did mate. They had 6 fingers, 6 toes. They had giantism. They became giants. Sort of kind of like, when you crossbreed a lion and a tiger, you can get a liger, which is much, much bigger than a lion or a tiger because it has giantism as well. It doesn't have the growth inhibitor in its DNA. Because it depends on the sex of the lion and the tiger that you mate. And maybe it's the same way with angels and humans. If they mate with one sex of each, there's no growth inhibitor, which makes them giants. You see what I mean? And actually, we see that even in just human, it happens in abnormalities with humans as well. Like Andre the Giant had this giantism disease or whatever you call it. I can't remember what you call it, but he just continued to grow his whole life. But of course, he was fully human. But I mean, you see what I'm trying to get at, though. He had sort of a disease, I guess you would say. Okay, so I just wanted to cover that a little bit. That was basically what I studied, and I think it covers a lot of stuff. I mean, it tells you who the devil was before he fell. It tells you that, he wasn't even the top tier angel, for one. He did have his own order, which he drew a third of the angels with him in his fall. Okay, he was a cherub, which is a protector, sort of like a bodyguard / I don't know, announcer or whatever the heck it is, around God. And cherubs. And then there was also cherubs put in place in the Garden of Eden to keep Adam and Eve out after they sinned as well. Archangels, I guess, would probably be more like generals or something. They run militaries or something like that. They're not the same as a bodyguard, obviously. So, I mean, that's kind of what it is. And by light bearer, like I said, with the whole Lucifer thing, the devil was the light upholder. He was kind of like the bodyguard of God. But God is the light. You see, there's a big difference between the light upholder and the light. Okay? So, it was unfortunate that St. Jerome used the same Latin term to describe both. And then now, in Catholic Mass, you can have a song that's sung that people can point at and say, hey, look, they're singing to the devil. But, they're singing to God because the Vulgate uses the same word. But then you have to ask yourself, is there a conspiracy here? Is there a conspiracy? Did they purposely do that? Did St. Jerome purposely use the same word? Is the Catholic Church hiding something? Which they could. I don't know. It wouldn't really surprise me, but I don't think that's what's going on here. But there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in the Catholic Church. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's hard to say. My wife's Catholic. One of my good friends is Catholic, and I have friends of all of them, Orthodox, Protestant, everything. But my whole thing is that we just follow God, and we try to follow the Scriptures. That's my whole point, And I think there's corruption in the Protestant church, and a lot of Protestants are completely naive to it. And I actually covered it in a lot of videos, so just check out my other videos. Church is singing to Lucifer, and what's going on there? I think I'm kind of in the middle on it. Let's just put it that way, because St. Jerome, when he translated the Latin Vulgate, used the same term for Isaiah 14 when it says morning star, and Revelation 22:16 when Jesus says, I'm the bright morning star. So it sounds like, basically the exact same word is used to refer to the devil and to Jesus. Okay? But that's only in Latin. Okay? If you actually look at the Greek, and if you look at the Hebrew, you'll notice they're actually different words. And actually, when I say Greek, that's probably best to just use Greek, because you have the Greek New Testament, you got the Greek Septuagint, and they're actually completely different words. Okay? And actually, I'm going to tell you what it really means, and how they're not actually saying the same thing. Okay, I got both terms in front of me. For Jesus, it is actually the Greek term orthrenos, which means, have you ever heard of the secrets of Enoch? the second book of Enoch. So looking through this book, and actually it's got some really interesting stuff in it. Actually started off just trying to study the topic of the morning star. You know, is it Jesus or Lucifer? And I did a search on Google and read a ton of different articles, and it just seemed like they were kind of guessing, a lot of them. I just felt like they really weren't fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of dawn. You have been cast down to earth. Actually, the term they use is Lucifer from the Latin. Who was once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend to the top of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Okay, so you've heard these verses before. And I'm reading around, and, you know, there's this, a lot of these YouTube videos saying, oh, look, see the Catholic Church. I mean, they never even talked about the Greek. You know, what does it say in the Greek and Hebrew? And I already knew that there were different words. Like, okay, what I'm referring to is 2 Peter 1 verse 19 and Revelation 2:28. I will also give him the morning star. In Revelation 2:22-16, I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this testimony for the churches. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright morning star. And then you have Isaiah 14 verses 12 through 15, how you have